Hello everybody, Rob here from Average Hobby, and today I want to talk about Speed Paints, Army Painter Speed Paint. It's been a year since 2.0 has been out, and I want to talk about my year of utilizing said paints, what I started with, how I kind of naturally progressed into what I'm doing with them now. So, overall, I like them. They're good. They do have their drawbacks, obviously. For example, the inability to do detail always was an issue with me. Once I figured that part out, you have to go in with acrylics, obviously, and do your details. Um, just because of the nature of them being very flowy. Um, Hard to also hide your mistakes because of how translucent they are. If you do certain mistakes, you're gonna have to strip your model and redo it. Versus acrylics, you just paint acrylic A over acrylic B. I found it very hard to cover up mistakes here. Many models I have that are, I just was like, I put so much effort. There you go. I'm not gonna strip this model because I screwed up, one little spot. Um, Overall, those are my major issues. Just hard to cover up mistakes if you make them. Um, and yeah, just hard to do details. In the end, those both work for it and obviously against it, mainly being that viscosity, that really runniness, because, the whole one coat solution idea. But that actually caused me into what I was starting to use them as down the road. So once I started using acrylics, again, like I said, if you don't know, I've been out of the hobby for almost 20 some odd years. I'm just getting back into it. These were the first paints that I got into, that in contrast to kind of get myself back into painting. But now I've gone into a more of a different style of painting, which I'll get into, because of how I use these now. One of the things I use these for, which is firstly is washes. We're ignoring the metals, but washes. I find now that I mostly will use a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio with the speed paint medium, and use them as a wash on something. So for example, if I wanted to do leather, I'll do a nice leather brown, and then I'll hit this with hardened leather with a 2-to-1 mix or even 3-to-1 mix, and do a wash, and it does what it's supposed to do, right? It pulls away from the centers, goes to the edges, things like that. Kind of gives that fake edge highlight type thing. And yeah, it works. They work very well as a wash. I also use them for glazes, which is a more of a newer thing. I'm still trying to figure them out. But usually on a 4 or a 5-to-1 ratio of speed paint medium to the paint, you can actually glaze with these things apparently. So I've been trying that out, fiddling and farting around. Found that actually on the Army Painter website, where they talk about speed paints and stuff like that and what you can do with them. One of the things was glazing. So I'm starting to learn how to glaze, and I figured, well, speed paint's pretty cheap where I live, and I got a whole bunch of them. So let's learn how to paint with glazes. One thing I do want to mention that I really like about these two is you can layer them. Because of how translucent they are, and you can also layer them on purpose. So for example, depending on my yellows or my browns, I will use them with the metallics, for example, if I want to change the tint or the color of the metallic. I also found if you use Vallejo metal medium and speed paint medium, and then your speed paint, you can turn a lot of these into metallics. Some of them, it will lighten them up quite a bit. So you'll end up thickening because of the amount of medium you'll need versus the amount of speed paint you need. You'll end up kind of messing around. There won't be speed paint anymore. It'll be a lot thicker. It'll be more like half speed paint, half regular acrylic. So it'll still flow, but it won't be as flowy as, for example, these ones down here. One of the things I did learn also long term is just the color range. There are way too many colors that are just the same. Like these 3 yellows here, way too similar. These 2 greens, way too similar. These 2 colors here, similar. These two blues. These 2 blacks. Other than this one being a little bit more blue, and this one's being a little bit more gray blue. That's it. This color over here, and these 2 over here. I found these 2 brownish reds are almost identical after they've dried. Even the murder scene I find a little bit like these three here are very similar. The metallics, I don't. If they were to cut back on the amount of metallics they make, I would not have a problem. These two here, so this one's Hoplite Gold and this one's Aztec Gold. Other than the fact that this has a slight greenish to it, they were almost the same. Yeah, I don't mind the three golds here because this one's more actually apparently it says bronze, but I feel like it's more of a dirty gold. Honestly, I find that like if I want a nice vibrant gold, I'll probably put a yellow on first and then hit it with a gold. But yeah, in the end, that's pretty much what I'm using them for now is glazes and washes, and I'm also using them on bases. I'll show a little bit of a. So this, whoops, is using 2 browns and a green, and then a dry brush with matte white. And overall, they actually look on a texture paint. They look pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been using them for. I haven't really been using them for like my main painting thing anymore. I'm using them as a wash over my main acrylic. I'm using them as a glaze over my main acrylic. And yeah, I'm using them on bases at this point. If I were to go back, I definitely would not have bought the whole set. I pretty much have used every paint at least once. But my main issue is just there's way too many that are just they're too similar. I have been trying to use some as like a artificial triad just to see what would happen like using these 3 purples or these 3 pinks. Yeah, it was in the end I like them. They're good. Don't get me wrong, but I think now that I've gone back into my main acrylics the way I used to paint 20 years ago, and I start getting into things a lot more detailed and more specific, I'm noticing that these definitely were a good beginner intro to getting back into the hobby, or in this case probably getting into the hobby. But long term, I feel as though these are probably going to get, I'm not going to say phased out because I'm going to use them all. Because as you can see well, you can't really see. If I bring the camera up a little bit, you can see I've got a lot of spare ones because I'm still using them quite a bit. I really like using the Grim Black, actually. I use a lot of that. I've actually got a couple more bottles of that coming because I go through that pretty fast. But yeah, anything with a silver. So here is the funny part. Out of all of these paints, I've only replaced one. That's the Hylor Blue. Every single other paint, I think, other than a couple of the washes, I'm on my original bottle still. So it's been a year, and I haven't gone through everything yet. But it's definitely going to be one of these things where a lot of the bottles I'm not going to be replacing as I go. I'm going to be using them just as a wash, and I'm actually no longer going to be buying or using any washes from RV Painter. I might use some of the new Fanatic ones because even though they said they didn't change something, I'm pretty sure they did. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. Overall, like I said, these are good. I like them. They're fine. They got me where I needed to go. They got me back into the hobby and helped progress things with my learning. But now that I've kind of taken the next step, so to speak, and getting back into the main full body acrylics, yeah, these have been kind of left by the wayside, and I think if you're also trying to come up with an idea of what to do with them after you've kind of, I don't want to say outgrown them, but changed up the way you paint a little bit, basing and washes and glazes. Yeah, I mean, like, just look at, when you think about it, I have, gosh, so many shades now of glaze and washes. I actually have almost a white wash, which is actually pretty happy. I think Vallejo makes one. I'm not 100% sure, but it's super hard getting Vallejo around here because there's a few things of theirs I want. A couple of their washes, the colors, because the color I don't have, I think. The white wash was the one I was really, really, really interested in. As for the metallics, like I said, a couple of them are just too close to the same thing, but overall they're pretty good. I like how you can change their vibrancy and stuff like that by putting another speed paint underneath, which is good. The pastels, I actually use them for brains. Yeah. Like I'll use like, oh, I want to make a blue brain, and then I'll use a blue wash, or I'll use the pastel seafoam, and I'll actually use a green wash. The purple with obviously the purple, and then the pastel salmon, I'll actually use, where is it? I think it's skin tone, which is one. I think this is the skin tone, yeah, with the flesh wash. And yeah, it makes really good brains. And then for nice crisp gold, actually, I'll use the pastel yellow and then hit it with the glitter and loot. And that just makes the yellow pop a little bit more. Don't know why, it just does. I also find the yellow makes a good wash for a couple types of Space Marines. You know which one. But all in all, yeah, like I said, good paints. It's a year on, and I'm still using them. Still using a lot of the metallics, actually, more than anything. Yeah, only thing I want to mention too is you can also make any of these a metallic. The way to do that is use Metal Medium by Vallejo. You are going to have to use a little speed paint medium. And then any color you want. Now, mind you, it will lighten up your color. So you might have to end up using like 3 drops of hardened leather, 1 drop of the matte medium, maybe 2, and then a thing of the speed paint medium. One of the things, that's the other thing too, layering of these. That was something that really bothered me, is the layering. So when you put most paints, right, when you look at the color, that's the color. You put on 1 or 2 layers. It's not getting darker. It's not getting lighter. That's the color. The problem with these, because of how translucent they are, the more layers you put on, the actual darker it gets. And you can actually kind of get different shades of what you want. So by thinning it out a little bit, you get obviously lighter. Adding more than 1 layer, it gets darker. But I found that the layering to me is an issue with it, just because it gets darker and it gets darker fast. But yeah, like I said, overall though, thumbs up. I really like these paints. But yeah, I think long term, if you're looking for a proper solution, main full body acrylic is the way to go. Then use it as washes and glazes and base paints. With that in mind though, thanks for watching. I really appreciate you. You could have been watching anything, but you're watching this. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.